On this week's Carrier App, we will look back at AT&T's recent quarterly results, as well as dig in a little bit deeper into what Sprint has planned for 2016.
Telecom Careers, the #1 global telecom and wireless job board, telecomcareers.com.
Hello and welcome to this week's Carrier App. I'm your host, Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief here at RCR Wireless News. Well, this week we are glad to be joined by Bill Ho, who's the Principal Analyst at 556 Ventures, to talk a bit about the carrier space. Bill, thanks for joining us this week again. We appreciate it.
You bet.
Well, let's talk. Obviously, we've had pretty much for the most part, all of the major U.S. carriers have announced their results. T-Mobile is still going to come out with their full results, but they've announced preliminary results at least. And so we've got numbers for the most part from all the big guys for their fourth quarter. I guess maybe first comment from you, I guess, what's your overall view of kind of what happened in Q4? I mean, obviously, prepaid and postpaid, depending on the carrier, we're up or down, depending on how you're looking at. But what was your overall view of kind of how, I guess, Q4 worked out for the operators?
Yeah, I'll just do a broad brush. Verizon continues to perform. They even though they were under attack directly from T-Mobile and Sprint, they still posted good numbers.
Yep.
Tablets helped them as well.
Yep.
T-Mobile still continued with their preliminary numbers, continue to perform. So from a postpaid standpoint in Q4, those two are kind of the winners.
Mm-hmm.
Sprint is a winner only because they didn't lose and they're showing momentum in going to positive territory.
Yeah.
AT&T kept its own, but I think that tablets helped them, and they may be soft in regular smartphone ads. But all in all, everybody was positive.
Yeah.
Everybody's churn was okay.
Yeah.
From a postpaid standpoint.
Yeah. That's a good point. And obviously, maybe we'll talk each one of these one by one. But let's start maybe with Verizon, like you started off with there too. I mean, Verizon seemed to have another strong, again, postpaid quarter for them. On the prepaid side, they tend to obviously they're not focused a lot on prepaid, but with how much growth there was in the prepaid space by T-Mobile and by AT&T. You would think at some point Verizon might want to maybe focus a bit more on prepaid, or at least do something, because again, they're just kind of still struggling in that sector. Which again, it's not a big focus for them, but
right.
There's still some numbers there, it seems.
Yeah. So from a prepaid standpoint, again, the broad brush, the winner was AT&T, followed by T-Mobile, and Verizon trailing at fourth place, which is surprising because they're typically a leader all across the board. But in prepaid, they are not. They're the net losers. About 9% loss year over year for them. So Verizon, you don't know. I mean, their prepaid makes up a very, very small part of their whole business. So you kind of wonder if it's they want to let it go, or if the prepaid as a category is more price sensitive, and there are so many more offerings out there that have the network and price sensitivities that these Verizon users would jump to.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe staying on the prepaid space a little more too, because it did seem like, I know, like with Sprint, for instance, I mean, they've traditionally been somewhat strong in the prepaid space with their Boost and their Virgin brand and even their Sprint prepaid band. But it seemed like, in the last 3 months there of 2015, those brands really suffered. And it did seem like you were saying, AT&T and T-Mobile with their Cricket and their Metro PCS brands respectively, really took advantage of the market and just seemed to really scoop up a lot of prepaid customers out there. And that was very interesting. I mean, again, it does seem like, for Sprint, almost in the same boat as Verizon. I mean, they're going to kind of get that worked out. I know on the Sprint quarterly call, they did mention that they were going to focus a bit more on Boost in the short term, and they did come out with some new Boost plans. And then the Virgin Mobile thing, they kind of mentioned that they were going to change the focus a bit on Virgin, what that's going to be going forward. So who knows how that plays out. It's always been weird for them because they have had multiple prepaid brands that they've had to kind of juggle a bit. So as you look at those guys, I mean, what do you think might happen with Sprint and what they might be looking to do maybe on the prepaid side to kind of turn around the corner a bit there?
Yeah. So I guess if you bubble it up from a corporate standpoint, the postpaid users are more desirable, right? Because they're bringing more ARPU. So it makes sense from a corporate standpoint to focus in on those customers. At the same time, maybe the marketing dollars aren't there for Boost, but at the same time, you can have to kind of complement AT&T's Cricket and T-Mobile's Metro for consistent momentum. And I get the feeling that because the losses at at Boost and Sprint prepaid is kind of as a result of the strong momentum that AT&T and T-Mobile still have.
Yeah.
And so if we look at 16, Boost has to overcome that momentum that AT&T and T-Mobile's Metro PCS has in the prepaid space. I think from the standpoint of AT&T, the surprising part is that they came up as the winner for 15 in terms of net adds over Metro PCS. So they gained about 1.6 million subscribers. T-Mobile was about 1.3 million, and with losses around 500,000 for Sprint and Sprint and Verizon.
Yeah.
I think from the standpoint of momentum, it's Cricket that has it going into 16, simply because Cricket is basically playing the same playbook as Metro when T-Mobile brought them. So for those people who remember, there's Apollo 15. It's basically going from a regional carrier to new markets and new distribution and expanded network that T-Mobile had. And that's why in 14, they had all those net adds, and that's why they continued that. This is the same for Cricket. So the momentum never really came until Q3, Q4, where you expand distribution in new markets and post new great numbers.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, right. On the T-Mobile Metro PCS thing, that was kind of a big part of their, the synergy that they were going to get out of the deal was the fact that obviously they're getting spectrum from Metro PCS, but to keep that Metro PCS brand going, they were talking a lot about, hey, we're going to expand this from 15 core markets to nationwide, and that alone is going to drive, just getting in front of people. Even if you get a little bit of market share, you're going to drive a lot of growth. And yeah, you're right. They showed a lot of that 2014, even into 2015. But yeah, AT&T with Cricket in 2015 has been a remarkable job of what they've done. I mean, I know Q4 of 2014, they were still losing customers at Cricket. Right. And then this year they had, leading the industry in growth for prepaid. So yeah, they definitely turned around that Cricket brand and really, I mean, you can see in the promotions too. I mean, they're really pushing the nationwide coverage, claiming they have broader coverage than T-Mobile and Sprint. I mean, so they're really pushing that addition part of it. And that seems like, like you said, momentum-wise into 2016, it seems like, at least on the prepaid side for AT&T, it's all behind their prepaid brand. And, obviously their postpaid is still suffering, but prepaid is definitely moving along.
So going back to Sprint, that's what they have to deal with, right? Increased distribution all around and then Metro just doing what they're doing, and they've been pretty good at it. So Boost has an uphill climb against them, and then we don't know what happens to Virgin. Yeah,
exactly. We'll see what happens there. But again, with those guys at Sprint there, I mean, they're already kind of nationwide as it is. They won't get like that significant bump that those other guys saw. But, with the Radio Shack distribution, that's still, I think, being worked through the system where they're Sprint's taking those Radio Shack stores, and they can somehow get that turned around. But I mean, with Sprint, again, there's so many other issues at stake there for those guys. I mean, that's something we can talk about as well here. I mean, obviously, Sprint results came out last week, and they maybe were perhaps somewhat rushed to get those results out because there was a lot of talk about what they were going to be doing with their network and, this whole network renovation plan and getting rid of macro sites. And so they kind of came out last week a bit on the defensive, perhaps, about what they were planning on doing. I mean, as you look back at what Sprint announced and kind of what their plans were, what's your view of kind of where Sprint stands today and maybe we'll do this for all the carriers, but kind of what you think they might need to do here in 2016?
I think from the standpoint, and I coined, I maybe stole this term too, is network parity. So
sure, if you coined
basically coverage parity, right? Yeah. So from the standpoint of the carriers, everybody knows that network is important, and it's just a matter of where the focus is. And so T-Mobile's been building like crazy. AT&T and Verizon have been building the LTE for a long time. They're bringing more spectrum in, introducing carrier aggregation and other new technologies that increase the user experience. But from the coverage standpoint, what's interesting as we stay today is interesting is T-Mobile is expanded to 304 million LTE POPs population.
Yep.
AT&T is at 310. Verizon is about 308, 309. So those three, you can argue that they've got somewhat of the same coverage. Yeah. And from there, it goes down to the user experience. So to answer your question about Sprint, they're very, very quiet about what their coverage goals are.
Yeah.
So if we know that the reference, the benchmark is 300, they haven't said that where they're going to meet 300 from a keeping up with the Joneses type of thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think they're still like, I think they're like around 270, I think right now, if I remember the numbers, but I could be off on that. But yeah, they're definitely far, I mean, pretty far away. And it's always that last 30 million pops to get to 300 is always the most difficult one. I mean, that's where you have to really put towers out there, have the right spectrum bands, obviously, and Sprint
Right.
with their 800 megahertz, they might be able to get some good coverage there. It's like a great user experience probably, but they can at least get some pop coverage using
Yeah,
it.
and I think that if you remember a couple of years ago, they signed, I guess, roaming, not roaming, but cooperation agreements
Yeah,
with
with the,
CCA carriers.
yeah,
And so those CCA carriers are in rural areas or in areas that Sprint may not want to go. And I think that that's part of the key is for them to light up LTE so that Sprint can increase those numbers.
yeah.
But we don't know where the execution is, and I guess time will tell when if Sprint does divulge what they want to do. But I think from the broad brush again, all carriers identifying, right? So to increase their user experience as consumers use or people use the video more and more,
Mhm,
they expect a fast experience, they expect a good low latency experience,
mhm.
and so they're throwing money in there for capacity and pure user experience. And so
Yeah.
that's where a lot of capex is going.
Yeah, and that seems like kind of what Sprint's probably going to be doing here, at least in the short to midterm, is maybe focus more on improving their capacity and latency, and in those denser markets. I mean, that's kind of been the whole focus of their 2.5 strategy is to really get that spectrum out there. They have a lot of it there that they can use. If they can just kind of get the deployment model put in place, and obviously there's always the backhaul issues and things like that too. But it seems like if they can get that put in place, they can at least improve that user experience. They might not have the network parity in scope as the bigger guys, and that's always going to hurt them a bit in terms of marketing because I mean, as we've seen over the ads of the past couple of months here, that coverage, LTE coverage, is a big part of what the operators are pushing. Sprint can't really play in that game.
Mhm.
They can play a bit in the speed game in some markets, but even that is still hit and miss. I mean, it seems like every year they announce one market that has this great coverage, but they're not. It seems like they're still kind of slow on getting that 2.5 capacity thing out there at a good clip. Obviously they have financial issues going on, but that needs to be sped up, and maybe 2016 is probably. It sounds like probably a big focus for them will be at least getting that out there more. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think from a standpoint, the playbook has already been there for even back in when the Clearwire acquisition was there. From a spectrum standpoint, we know that if you throw enough spectrum and you have enough fat pipes, your potential user and speed experience is going to be greater, and that is their ace in the hole as we get to coverage parity or network parity. Then that's kind of differentiation other than price, right? It's a user experience and speed, and we always knew that. I think the people who are looking towards that, if you have enough fat pipes, and therefore you can bring that speed to bear, and then kind of win a differentiation of why us versus the other guys. But for Sprint, it comes down to execution, right? And it's been a long time since
Yes.
they've executed well.
Agreed. But that's been the biggest issue, yeah. And that's a little tease for later on in the show. You're going to see maybe a little review of some Scotch, but stay tuned for that a little bit later on in the show. But yeah, I agree. That's been their biggest issue is execution. If they can't get that nailed down, again, they've had management changes too. I mean, it seems like a lot of their old Clearwire guys now seem to be kind of raising up the chain there in command when it comes to network side of things, and they also have SoftBank guys too. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, for them, I think execution probably is the key word for them in 2016. Maybe look at the other guys. So maybe like Verizon, for instance. I know we talked about them already a little bit, but what is their goal for 2016? Do you think? When they have focused a lot on their video strategy, and they've got FiOS still going on. They've got a lot of interesting things happening. What do you think they need to focus on, perhaps for 2016?
Well, it's not what I think. I think it's whatever they telegraph. So back a couple of years ago, they were telegraphing that they were flat. They were going to be flat for growth for a couple of years, and then it's going to go up in 17 or 18.
Yeah.
Right. So from that standpoint, you think that they want to kind of keep their churn down, keep their margins up, don't go crazy with I guess matching price plans and doing. I'll use Mike Seifert's term, irrational things in terms of promotions. So I think that they're very conservative. They want to keep high-value users and retain users, keep their churn down. But at the same time, they're counting on video. Go 90. as their Go 90 as one component of their video strategy, of which there's mobile advertising, right? And so I think what we'll look at is the acceptance of Go 90 and getting that content in which to trigger people to acquire this agnostic content from Go 90, so that they can fire up their AOL-based advertising and analytics and kind of monetize that all around. On the back end, you hear a little bit about what they're doing with IoT, not a whole lot. Another thing is from a network side is, aside from densification, is they're pushing to LTE-U. So licensed spectrum to kind of I'll say offload some of that data. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in terms of 16 from what they're going to do from a big picture level.
Yeah, and they're interesting too, because they're probably the one carrier that is, obviously more seems most focused on margins and things like that. And obviously, when you have big margins like they do, that's obviously a big focus for investors. And they're still, we look back a couple of years, they had to spend $130 billion to acquire the remaining stake in Verizon Wireless. So, I mean, they're still trying to kind of write their books from that huge expenditure. And, obviously wireless is a big part of their business, but it seems like they were still trying to focus on getting their credit rating back up to a higher standard and things like that too. So they are definitely more focused on the value part. But that Go 90 thing, I mean, we were there for the launch last year at CTA and they talked about it, and they weren't pushing it as a big thing, but it does seem like that is, they don't launch a lot of new products, and so for them to launch something like that was kind of unique, and it's a unique product out there too. Yeah,
I think Go 90 is a subset of a larger video strategy, right? Yeah. So part of that video strategy is the bet on Freebie, their sponsored data.
Yeah.
Well, also, we've been waiting for a long time is LTE broadcast, right? So from the standpoint of it's been around, we're expecting that all the components are there.
Yeah.
Will it make its rear its head in 16? Or will net neutrality debate kind of cloud that? So they're not the only ones in that debate, right? There's T-Mobile binge on, and also who else has a LTE broadcast in the background is AT&T.
Yeah.
So let's shift to AT&T. It's something similar in terms of video and mobile integration, which they are with their DirecTV properties, getting some content deals and better buying power from DirecTV in order to bring known content as opposed to viral content maybe that millennials are focused on, but more of that in terms in bringing that in strategy and kind of mining wireless people to take DirecTV, and DirecTV to take AT&T wireless service, right? Yeah. So that unlimited promotion that we have is kind of indicator of that, and I think the executive moves that was named yesterday, where John Stankey, in charge of entertainment and video, has got Glenn Lurie reporting to him, and then Ralph De La Vega has got international, and so AT&T's got a lot irons in the fire in terms of growth. So Mexico, I think we all know, expanding that network there, and Ralph De La Vega is got international responsibility. So you can kind of see where they're going in 16 and 17 in their focus and what their bets are and what they're going to execute on.
Yeah, right. That unlimited plan they launched, that definitely showed that they were intent on making DirecTV a solid, at least getting more interest in DirecTV and growing that if they can. It allows them also to kind of market unlimited data. Obviously there's a hook to it. You have to take DirecTV service, but they can at least compete against, T-Mobile and Sprint offering, unlimited data. They can at least, compete against that. Obviously Verizon still doesn't do that. But you're right. It does show a focus on that DirecTV asset and trying to mine as much as they can out of that. And obviously we have the content deals, doing stuff like that too. That's a big part of that.
And honestly, if those unlimited users, AT&T new unlimited users, are going to consume, and they're going to consume the DirecTV content as either universe users or exclusive AT&T content from LTE broadcast, it stays within the network. So there's kind of a network story right there as well. And then from an ad standpoint and analytics, they've got a bigger base in order to understand consumer behavior and influence. Yeah.
The DirecTV asset is obviously going to be an interesting play for them, how that all plays out, because it doesn't give them a lot of insight into what's happening in the video space. But yeah, it depends on how they focus on it. And again, they seem like they're trying to. And yeah, the international stuff too, you mentioned. I mean, obviously Mexico for them is going to be big. They announced numbers coming out of Q4 in Mexico, and it seems to be showing good growth. I mean, I haven't covered a lot in the past. I'm not really sure how it does competitively, but they're putting a lot of focus in Mexico. Again, shifting De La Vega down to focusing on that as well. And they're including those numbers now in their coverage too. I mean, they're claiming 350 million pops covered, including Mexico now. So that could be an interesting play for them going forward. I mean, how much do you think that's going to play in their marketing and their business plans for 2016?
Well, I think from a business plan standpoint, it's huge in terms of growth, right? Growth opportunity in Mexico. It's always been a monopoly. They're welcomed by the government, and they're building an LTE network to promote competition. So the trajectory is only going to be positive in terms of subscriber acquisition in Mexico.
Yeah. I guess Canada's getting short-shifted on this. I mean, obviously Canada's part of the North American continent, but no one seems to care coverage up there. But I mean, at one point there, we almost had Verizon buying into Canada, but they backed out of that. So I guess Canada will just have to be on its own for now. But yeah, the focus on Mexico is interesting. I mean, all the carriers now are offering some sort of roaming into Mexico for their customers, but still, getting money out of that market. It seems like AT&T is the only one who's really positioned to do it because they have the network down there now, and so that's going to be a big part for them.
I think just to get a little more granular with Mexico is that they have a growing middle class, right? And if you take a look at Latin America, I think the ARPU's in the teens.
Yep.
And it's mainly a prepaid market. So it's a postpaid playbook to kind of convert a prepaid audience or even upsell and increase that postpaid audience to increase ARPU to get that return on capital investment of the network there. So that's going to be the interesting thing that if you were looking at to look at for trends is increasing ARPU of their, if they report it. I don't know if they report it.
I didn't see it on this one yet. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of converting that prepaid culture into a postpaid or just stimulating that middle class to get more money out of them and get them away from competition.
Yeah, and again, if they do with the LTE network expansion, I mean that's a higher speed network, that's a premium kind of network, and so yeah, that could definitely draw postpaid customers to that. So that could be a good way for them to do it. They seem like they're pretty well positioned. I mean, again, execution will be key for them, but unlike some other carriers, it does seem like they've done a pretty good job in the past on execution, and that's been a big part for them too. So again, a lot of investments can be needed there, but we'll see how that one plays out. But and then maybe wrap up with T-Mobile. Obviously, they had another big 2015, a lot of growth there. They're still the disruptor in the market. As we look into 2016, I mean, can they keep that momentum going? I mean, it does seem like, again, their smartphone growth has been impressive. I mean, it's been tapering off a little bit. They haven't really done much with tablets. That's been a big market for everybody else. They've done a little bit here and there, but not really seen a lot of growth in tablets. So it seems like they still have some potential if they want to branch out of their smartphone, postpaid, and also their prepaid with Metro PCS. I mean, what do you see? I guess what are your big tips for looking at T-Mobile for 2016?
I think that the acquisition appetite will still continue, although you kind of see that they are tempering their irrational promotions. I mean, the biggest draw I think personally for them was their $120 for 10 gig per person. So that same promotion is now 6 gig.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of I think they're looking at profitability, and Binge On, I think, as we talked last time, is a customer value story, but at the same time, it's a data saving story.
Yeah.
So I think it was an investor conference either in December or January where Neville Ray said once they flipped the switch on, they saw a 10% savings in data, basically. So as you go into 16 and as Binge On gets more and more, they're going to report outside of net neutrality stories. They're going to kind of, from a PR standpoint, want to look and say, so many people actually they are doing that. So many people are gravitating to video, but at the same time, they're going to say we're saving a lot based upon this technology, and so that could be used across for more capacity for the enhance the user experience all around as they build more users. So I think that they'll still acquire, and from a standpoint of postpaid users, Verizon has over 100,000. So it's no secret why Verizon's kind of the target to kind of draw from, right? So they'll I think they'll still acquire it. They're going to still do Un-carrier,
Yep.
right? So they'll go from they went to the Roman numeral 10,
Yep.
Super Bowl, right?
Yes.
From the Roman numeral, and then maybe it'll be going back to numbers
Yes.
for 16. So that's kind of their DNA now, to kind of continue to be the Un-carrier.
Yeah, yeah, and again, I mean, their number 10 announcement was the Ben John announcement, and obviously that still has a lot of repercussions across the market. I think they're still trying to absorb the impact of that because they are getting a lot of attention from the net neutrality crowd. But it's a good point you make. I mean, that was definitely. I mean, on the front of it, it looks like it's a great consumer play. But I think for them, probably the biggest reason they did it was for network savings. I mean, that's a big part for them. I mean, they've got spectrum, but anytime you can save on network assets or network spectrum and things like that, you have to do it. And so, if they can save 30% of their capacity there, that's a given. You have to do that whenever you can. So we'll see how that one plays out. But yeah, I think I'm just kind of still waiting to hear what number 11 is going to be from them. I'm surprised it's been this long since they've announced anything, because usually they're every 3 or 4 months they announce a new Un-carrier thing. We've been
I think from a network standpoint, they've already had a new moniker, right? So it's not only wideband LTE now; it's LTE extended.
Yeah, extended
LTE, right? So they throw that, and in 16, they'll probably implement stuff that they bought in 15 in the secondary market.
Mm-hmm.
They'll keep on the hunt to expand that LTE extended footprint.
Yeah. And again, it seems like from the recent tests we've seen too, I mean, their coverage is getting much better in the LTE space, and that 700 megahertz they've been picking up has been great for them. So it's helping them quite a bit, at least. Like you said earlier, the network parity part of it, they're up there at least. And, again, they're always very innovative and, trying to be at the front of that. And, the CEO is always out there on Periscope or whatever, talking to the fans out there too. So it seems to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, I think another thing about T-Mobile is from a PR front and marketing front is that they are actually, you might have gotten an email from T-Mobile PR is giving you a handset because you're an influencer to kind of prove that you're just as good as Verizon. And so I think that's going to be a tone into 16 to kind of prove to the potential subscriber base or switcher base, say we're just as good as Verizon, and they'll continue to do all these things to kind of change the notion that the network's not there. Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, they did send out that email by asking, if we wanted to have a Verizon handset and try it out. And I'm not good with handsets, so I denied it. But I get too confused by those things. But yeah, they definitely are pushing that model of, hey, we got the network parity out there. We're just as good as they are. But yeah, it's interesting to see what they do. going ahead this year. Again, they have a lot of opportunities still to grow with tablets and things like we said earlier. But it's still going to be an interesting 2016. Again, the video play is big. DirecTV. With AT&T has DirecTV. Verizon's got Go 90. T-Mobile's got Ben John, Sprint, let's see what they're going to do. But it's a lot of new markets that could be really coming to bear in 2016, seems like. Yeah,
Sprint. I think Sprint, looking at 16, they're looking at just increasing the better numbers from Q4. Yeah. So Q1 may be soft. I mean, from the standpoint of the carrying it over to Q1, that promotion 50%.
Yeah, 50% off.
They want to keep that momentum going, but at the same time, Q4 is typically the largest number. So can they keep above 500 into 16 across the board to show that improvement and switching basically? And how do the other guys defend against it, specifically Verizon?
Yeah.
And I think looking at 16, one of the huge events that didn't happen in 15 was the new iPhone.
Right? Yeah, true.
I know that there's, at least from Apple, their growth isn't it as big as 14, 15? Yeah, 14 had the new iPhone. 16 was a next iteration. 17 will have the new iPhone. So whether it's going to be in March or whether it's going to be the traditional July or the fall, something's going to happen in terms of a lot of promotion around and buying for subscribers around the carriers. Then competition is projected to go up whenever that happens.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're right. That's something that maybe gets overlooked. I know I tend to forget about that, but you're right. Whenever there's a refresh of an iPhone, you don't get a lot of promotions around the refresh. But whenever there's a new model, so if we get an iPhone 7 again sometime this year, that could be, you're right, that could be a big driver for what carriers do, at least in the fall timeframe, if that's the timing that they're going to do for it. You're right. That's a huge impact. I mean, Sprint when they got the iPhone 6, I mean, the whole iPhone for life promotion, and I mean, that was a big part of what they were doing. And even T-Mobile, when they first got the iPhone, I mean, that just drove everything that they thought about was, doing that. So, and with the device leasing plans now, and with people, being able to upgrade phones on a more regular basis, it'll be interesting to see how they attack that market, because it's a different market now than it was back in 2014, I think.
Yeah. So as an aside on device upgrades, right? So device upgrades is a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
In the old days, the device upgrade meant that there was more subsidy, and therefore your profit per user goes down. But at the same time, device upgrades is also a anti-churn measure.
Yeah.
But given the amount of money that you get for switching, may or may not be that good. But for the existing base, in a way, you want them to upgrade.
Yeah.
Because as you have these network improvements, you want them to get a better user experience. And if you have a poor user experience, then you leave, right? So a good example is like users who have old phones that aren't taking advantage of new LTE bands,
Yeah.
or carrier aggregation, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So they stuck with it because they're either price sensitive or, hey, that phone's working for me well, I'm not going to do anything with it. Then that kind of is counterproductive in terms of the user experience. So that's a double-edged sword that carriers are doing. And so from a promotion standpoint, we're seeing a lot of promotions on devices, and that could be good, that could be bad. It depends on the carrier.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, with T-Mobile, they're obviously trying to get more people out there with the band 12 devices with 700 megahertz involved there. And Sprint was trying to get the carrier aggregation devices out there too. So you're right. You are seeing a lot more promotions along handsets. We saw a lot of them last year, end of the year, but it does seem like that's continuing. And you're right. It's like, do you pay? Obviously, it costs a little bit more money up front, or there's some financial part of it in getting devices out there. But there's a network saving aspect, which, it's probably a little bit harder to put a number on, at least from the outside looking in. But that's kind of the balance you have to make is, is it worth, if you have to give a little bit more promotion on a device, but we're going to save, 2% on the network savings down the road, it might make sense for those guys to continue to push that. And that seems, that's kind of what's happening. It seems like at least the first month now of 2016, that's kind of seems a big part.
There are multiple components on why handset promotions are going out. I mean, either retention or gross ads or whatever have you. But suffice it to say that, even though carriers handset subsidies went away, doesn't necessarily mean that handset subsidies are going away. I mean, if you,
I know what you mean. Yeah,
they're still there,
yeah.
In a different form. It's just that it's a long-term hit or a short-term hit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, right. They're still offering those deals on the. I mean, obviously, you're still doing the monthly payments for it, but you're still getting deals on those things. So, that seems to be kind of what's playing out. Well, I mean, again, any other? I know we talked a little bit off camera about some topics. Have I missed anything that you wanted to cover for this week? Because obviously, I know I do tend to ramble a lot about different things.
We both ramble a lot. I think we covered
most of the big things. I think this week.
Oh yeah. So one of the things that I think we'll see more and more is the use of third parties. We've already seen it, but third parties to validate network, right? So Root had it from a monopolistic standpoint.
Yeah.
OpenSignal came out. I think you guys reported that T-Mobile beat OpenSignal. That's crowdsourcing. Nielsen report that first instance I saw Nielsen in terms of this PR stuff was that Sprint.
Yep.
They use crowdsourcing. So the drive testing, independent drive testing, is now being supplemented by crowdsourcing as from a PR claim. I don't know how consumers will use it, but I mean it's another quiver in the marketing game.
Yeah, no, it definitely, I mean, I would say it's definitely adding to the confusion a bit. I know, again, over the holidays and kind of the first part of the year here, we've seen, obviously Verizon came out with the Root metrics-based advertising with the balls going down, and then T-Mobile came out with their counterpoint to it, and Sprint as well. Mm-hmm. And, obviously it adds confusion to the market, which I think for Sprint and T-Mobile was probably the point of it. I mean, they're trying to dilute Verizon's advantage there by saying, hey, we're just going to confuse the market by doing our own thing. And so that was an interesting way to counter it. And again, they all have their own third parties that they partner with or somehow have an agreement with. I don't know how it works. They won't ever tell you the details of it, but they always seem to be able to find somebody who will validate their claims out there. And so that seems to be, that's an interesting part of how it's going to play out this year. Right.
And all these things are towards what I was saying that we're getting to a point where there's either the coverage parity or network parity. and then it's kind of the differentiation. So right now, it's the blocking and tackling for T-Mobile and Sprint is basically, hey, don't believe our network is as expansive or as good as Verizon, which is kind of the target, right, in all this because of their map. So that's kind of the whole point of it, is to bring their brands up and kind of bring that parity equation.
Yeah, and looking back on the map thing too, it's like, how smart was it for Verizon back in the day to buy Alltel? I mean, that was a brilliant move when it came to coverage. Alltel back in the day was very rural, very Western, and they bought Western Wireless themselves, and so these were all small, not a lot of pops covered, but on a map it was a lot of coverage, and so that really seemed to really help Verizon to really kind of push this whole map thing, because they had this, they had that coverage out there that they could show. That really put the other guys scrambling. I mean, that was a big marketing coup back in the day.
This is kind of a geeky aside, but when Alltel got bought by Verizon, Alltel cut a deal with Sprint for roaming.
They did. Yep.
That allowed Sprint to have a pretty good national coverage, at least for 3G.
Yes.
And now with LTE and 3G getting kind of put in the back burner and Sprint trying to kind of minimize their outlay for roaming, you kind of wonder that. And it's just, LTE roaming is going to be big for Sprint more so than Verizon and AT&T, and T-Mobile will still, but less so for the big guys.
Yeah, no, yeah. For Sprint, obviously their map, I know, it seems like their map was getting smaller. I mean, I know I'm out here in the western part of the country, and there's some big square states out here of not a lot of people, but there are coverage holes there for Sprint. I mean, even if you look at the map, there are whole states that aren't covered. Where in the East Coast or in the South, it's probably not as big of an issue, but some parts of the country there's no coverage, and on a big map in the U.S., you see these big old white splotches there that kind of show up on that. So yeah, that's gonna be interesting to see how they play that. Obviously, we got the CCA show coming up here in a few months, and that's always a big topic for CCA members is LTE roaming, and so that's a big part for Sprint, and so we'll see how that plays out. If they can continue to push those agreements and maybe get some deployments there. That they can then kind of piggyback on top of and expand their coverage. But that's gonna be that's gonna be a big point in 2016. Is LTE roaming will be another topic. Again, so many topics for 2016.
Well, I don't think LTE roaming is going to be on the forefront in terms of like it is.
Oh yeah, not as yeah. It won't be as good.
It's going to be a hidden thing that nobody really wants to advertise. That the reason why you have roaming is that you don't have presence there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's could be So that'll be maybe more for some operators than others, but still plays that. Well, I think that again I think we have most of the topics for this. I think for this show, I did say earlier, we're gonna have a new segment on the show as well every once in a while. We're gonna talk a bit about Scotch. I know Bill. I know you're a bit of a connoisseur yourself of Scotch. I do tend to dabble myself a little bit, so we thought we'd throw this in at the end here. Again, if you don't care about Scotch, you can stop watching now. But if you do like Scotch. We might just bring up a few names occasionally on what we've been seeing out there in the market in terms of Scotch. So we'll do a little Scotch of the week thing here. So maybe from you, Bill, what's a Scotch on top of your mind this day and age or today for you right now? What are you perhaps drinking right now?
Currently, yes. I am drinking Aberfeldy, which is a Dewar's brand.
Okay.
It is very. I'm not a connoisseur yet. I just got into it. And,
I did too. Yeah. So we're just saying that, but.
It's very, very light and spicy, and it's an easy drink.
That's very good to hear. Very good. Myself, I'm just finishing off. I had a bottle of Glenfiddich 12. That was very easy drinking Scotch. It's very nothing too spectacular about it, but it's a nice go-to Scotch. I've got I think my next one I'll be going with was Glenlivet Nadura. I think is a good one too, but that is more of a special occasion Scotch. Something we don't like to break out with just the regular riffraff who come by my house.
That's true. So I think what we agree is that the special occasion Scotch is basically you don't share with anybody.
Yeah, you always have to have two versions of Scotch in your house. I mean, you can have a basic blended. I mean, it's good to have a blended whiskey as well because if you got the partiers coming over and they want to do shots or they want to mix something up, it's good to have a Jameson or a basic Dewar's or something like that, a Jack around that you can kind of have. I know that's more of an American whiskey, but that's something you can have to blend if you need to with something else. You got to have that around. Then it's also good to have a basic Scotch, a good 12-year, 10-year Scotch is good to have because, you might have some people who don't want the basics whiskey, so you want something a little nicer. So it's good to have a good 10 or 12-year single malt to go well. But then you have your special occasion Scotch, which you do hide from the kids. You mark the bottle so you make sure no one's drinking that one. But that's the one that you got to have, if you have a hard day for yourself, you just want to sit back and relax, you got to have that nicer bottle there to kind of soothe the insides a bit. And that's a good point.
Another tactic is that you can redirect with just red and white wine.
That's a good too. I guess that works out. You can get a nice bottle of red for $7 and just pass that around too. That should be fine for everybody. So yeah, that's a good point too. It's good to have a variety in the house. Yeah, it's probably good to have some vodkas around too. You never know. People like vodka for some reason, or some tequilas too. Yeah, but again, yeah, for scotches, like you said, it's good to have. You gotta have more than one bottle. You gotta have a variety. It's not, you don't need to have too many, but you gotta have at least probably at least 3 bottles of scotch / whiskey in the house. One for the crowds, one for a little more finer taste, and then one for yourself for when you're just alone and just need something to drink.
I think there are people probably who are watching this who might have more than one, more than 10, more than 20, more than 50. We don't know that.
And if you do, let us know and invite us over, because we are more than welcome or open to testing more out. Again, I think we're both somewhat new to this. I know there's people who have been Scotch drinkers for quite a while. And again, if you want to send some comments to us, feel free about what to recommend. But again, I think, I think you're right, that people do have a lot more than what.
If we look ahead, if everybody's going to CTIA, we can have, maybe we can plan something.
Yeah, we made a little Scotch tasting there. We can go to a bar somewhere there, and we can do something. That might be a good idea. I think, Bill, that's a great plan. We should maybe work with some advertisers on that and set something up.
Or a PR agency would
yes,
love to kind of talk about things like that.
That could be a good way to go too. You're right. That could be fun as well. But hey, again, we want to touch a little bit on the Scotch front. Again, we've been just tasting some while we're doing this. I think at least one of us, I know it's afternoon right now as we're talking. One of us, maybe it's not quite afternoon yet. But hey, it's always a good time to drink Scotch. It's a very refreshing drink, I think. But there's a little bit of adultness to it as well. It's not like having a beer or something like that. There's a little bit, when you have some, you feel a little more, at least I do, a little more mature, which I need all the help I can get with that. So for me, that's a big part of it.
Well said, Dan.
There we go. Thank you. Well, hey, Bill, again, appreciate the great telecom insight as always, wireless industry insight as always. I do recommend those who are watching, if you're still with us, we appreciate it. Go to 556 Ventures, check out Bill's always got some great updates on what's happening in the market. You can follow him on Twitter handle, Billho88.
3/8. 3/8,
Billho888 on Twitter. Whenever there's any news coming out, whenever there's quarterly results, he's on top of that stuff more than you know. He's covering that stuff on a sentence by sentence basis of what's going out there. So definitely check that out as well. But Bill, again, thanks for joining us on this week's show, and thanks again for the Scotch tips as well. It's always good. And next time we talk, we'll do some more Scotch as well.
Yeah, I hope next Carrier Wrap, the next guest will also be drinking.
Yeah, hopefully I can maybe get that to all the shows, but at least we got it with you, which is great. So we appreciate it. Well, hey, again, thanks for the time today. We appreciate it.
You bet.
All right. Well, thanks for watching this week's Carrier Wrap, and make sure to check us out again next week. Thanks for watching.